Oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller, the world's first billionaire. His company, Standard Oil, savages and then swallows up its competitors and ends up controlling 90% of the American oil industry.
1870, Cleveland, Ohio. A man in a black coat walks into a refinery office with a ledger under his arm. He's calm, methodical, polite, and about to take control of an industry that will define the next century. His name is John D. Rockefeller. By the time he dies in 1937, he'll be the richest man in history. Adjusted for inflation, his wealth passes $400 billion. His name now sits on hospitals, universities, and foundations that still shape American life. But behind every plaque and donation lies the same question. Was Rockefeller the greatest businessman in history, or its most ruthless monopolist? He called his rise divine providence. His critics called it organized greed. He built Standard Oil into a machine so dominant that it controlled almost 90% of the US oil market. He crushed competitors with secret railroad deals, predatory pricing, and a structure so complex it invented modern corporate law. To some, Rockefeller embodied the promise of capitalism: control, order, and precision. To others, he exposed its flaw, that once wealth reaches a certain scale, it stops competing and starts consuming. In this video, we'll trace how one man turned oil into empire, morality into math, and ambition into something far colder. Because Rockefeller didn't just change business, he changed what business was allowed to become. John Davison Rockefeller was born in 1839 in Richford, New York, the second of 6 children. His father, William, was a traveling con man known as Devil Bill. He sold fake cures and cheated neighbors out of cash. His mother, Eliza, was devout, thrifty, and uncompromising. She taught her sons 2 things: save every penny and never trust the world to play fair. Rockefeller watched his father vanish for weeks at a time, bragging about getting the better of people. He learned early that control was survival. At 16, he found his first job as a bookkeeper in Cleveland, $3.50 a week. He mastered ledgers with almost obsessive precision. Every cent had a place, every debt had a plan. He tithed 10% to his church and reinvested the rest. He called money a sacred trust, but it wasn't faith, it was calculation. He believed discipline itself was divine, that frugality and power were forms of grace. In 1863, at the age of 24, he entered the oil business. Not drilling, refining. Crude oil was chaotic, volatile, inefficient, wasteful. Refining it meant order, predictability, margin. It was everything he valued. By 1870, Rockefeller and a handful of partners founded Standard Oil of Ohio. Their promise was efficiency, but their method was domination. He undercut competitors by fractions of a cent, then bought them out when they folded. Every merger became one less risk, one more asset, one step closer to monopoly. He dressed simply, spoke softly, and avoided public scenes. But behind closed doors, his precision became weaponized. He studied his rivals' costs, negotiated secret shipping rates, and eliminated uncertainty like a disease. In a single decade, Rockefeller went from small-town bookkeeper to the undisputed master of Cleveland's oil. The local papers called it the Cleveland Massacre. And yet to him, it was just good business, the triumph of order over chaos. He believed he wasn't destroying competition, he was refining it. With Cleveland under his control, Rockefeller turned Standard Oil into a national machine. The new mission? Control volatility by controlling everything. His first advantage came from scale. He bought barrels in bulk, built his own warehouses, and burned waste fuel to power refineries. Every cost was trimmed to the bone, every process measured. Then came the hidden edge: railroad rebates. Through secret contracts with major rail lines, Standard Oil paid the published rate but quietly received refunds on every barrel shipped. Competitors paid full freight. He didn't. That single detail destroyed them. He called it business. Rivals called it blackmail. When independents protested, Rockefeller dropped prices below cost until they folded, then bought them for pennies. He called it consolidation, and they called it surrender. By 1872, Standard Oil controlled nearly every refinery in Cleveland. Agents were dispatched to the few that remained with a message: join Standard or be eliminated. Most joined, the rest vanished. There was no violence, only signatures. The wars were fought in contracts, freight rates, and balance sheets. Every acquisition added another gear to the machine: pipelines, tank cars, marketing, export terminals. Vertical integration followed. He controlled crude supply, refining, transport, and distribution. From wellhead to kerosene lamp, every step now paid him. Horizontal integration locked in the rest. By the 1880s, Standard Oil controlled more than 90% of US refining capacity. Competitors were gone, railroads depended on him, and Rockefellers believed hardened into doctrine: chaos wastes profit, and profit justifies order. But with every refinery absorbed, one question grew louder. If one man could control the flow of oil, what couldn't he control? By the early 1880s, Rockefeller's empire had a new problem. It was too large for the laws that tried to contain it. Each state had its own incorporation rules, and Standard Oil operated in many. Competitors couldn't challenge him in business, so they tried in court. He needed a way to outgrow regulation itself. The solution was structural: the Standard Oil Trust, formed in 1882. 37 companies across multiple states, all placed under one unified board of trustees. Shareholders surrendered their stock to Rockefeller and his inner circle in exchange for certificates that represented ownership, but no control. It was the first modern holding company, a financial invention designed to centralize power without breaking the law. It worked. The trust turned Standard Oil from a company into a system, a mechanism that could expand, conceal, and dominate simultaneously. Profits flowed upward. Oversight dissolved, and accountability disappeared. He didn't just own the oil business. He owned the architecture of corporate capitalism. By 1885, Standard Oil had moved its headquarters to New York City, 26 Broadway, a symbol of both ambition and insulation. From there, Rockefeller owned production, transportation, and distribution across continents. Competitors couldn't see where Standard ended and its subsidiaries began. His genius wasn't discovery or invention. It was coordination. He found ways to make legal what was ethically indefensible. And in doing so, Rockefeller didn't just build a monopoly. He created the template for everyone that came after. By the 1890s, Rockefeller's control was absolute, and so were the consequences. Behind Standard Oil's efficiency lay a human toll few outside Cleveland ever saw. Workers labored 12-hour shifts surrounded by fumes that could ignite without warning. Accidents were routine. Compensation was rare. A single refinery fire could erase dozens of lives and still be recorded as operational loss. The men who made the kerosene that lit America couldn't afford to burn it in their own homes. Average refinery wages hovered near $1.50 a day, far below what competing industries paid. Strikes were crushed quietly, often through local authorities funded by Standard Oil's donations. Independent refiners fared no better. Rockefeller's secret shipping rebates had already broken most of them. The few who survived found rail access suddenly unavailable. He didn't need to threaten them directly. The system did it for him. Suppliers who refused Standard's terms saw their credit vanish. Newspapers that criticized the company lost advertisers overnight. Even politicians understood. Crossing Standard meant economic suicide. To Rockefeller, this wasn't cruelty. It was calculus. Stability, he believed, demanded control, and control required sacrifice. He once said, "The day of combination is here to stay. Individualism has gone, never to return." In a sense, he was right. By the turn of the century, oil powered everything from lamps to locomotives. And every gallon, every drop that moved through America's veins passed through his hands first. The industrial age had found its engine. Power always invites resistance. For 2 decades, Rockefeller's empire had operated in near silence, invisible, unstoppable, untouchable. But no monopoly stays hidden forever. The first cracks didn't come from competitors or courts. They came from the press. Ida Tarbell, the daughter of an oil refiner ruined by Standard, spent years dissecting the company's internal web, freight contracts, rebate schemes, shell purchases. Her investigation, The History of the Standard Oil Company, began running in McClure's magazine in 1902. Each installment hit harder than the last. She exposed not only his practices, but his philosophy, that domination was simply the natural order of business. Public outrage followed. Preachers denounced him. Politicians sensed opportunity. For the first time, the richest man in America became its villain. In 1906, the federal government moved. The Department of Justice filed suit under the Sherman Antitrust Act, accusing Standard Oil of restraining trade, manipulating prices, and crushing competition. The case dragged on for 5 years, thousands of pages, hundreds of witnesses, every ledger under scrutiny. And on May 15, 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. The company was ordered to dissolve into 34 separate corporations. The headlines called it a reckoning. Rockefeller called it a reorganization. He owned controlling stakes in nearly all the new firms. When their stock prices soared, his fortune multiplied. In trying to destroy him, the government made him richer than ever. When the smoke cleared, Rockefeller did something unexpected. He stepped out of the spotlight and began giving his fortune away. Between 1913 and 1937, he donated over $500 million, the equivalent of $10 billion today. He founded the Rockefeller Foundation, the University of Chicago, and the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, funding breakthroughs in medicine, education, and science. Hookworm, yellow fever, malaria, diseases once rampant in the South and abroad, saw real declines because of his money. But every act of generosity came with a shadow. Critics called it image control, the most effective public relations campaign in history. Rockefeller re-emerged, handing out dimes to children outside his estate. The press called it charm. Historians called it rebranding. Philanthropy became his second empire, one built not on oil, but on influence. The foundation he created shaped global health policy, higher education, and economic development for generations. In boardrooms and classrooms alike, his name replaced Standard Oil as the symbol of American power. He'd been condemned as a monopolist, then reborn as a benefactor. But the fortune funding vaccines and universities came from the same machine that had crushed competition and underpaid labor. Charity softened the memory. It didn't change the math. By the time he died in 1937, Rockefeller had lived long enough to watch public opinion turn again. To some, he was proof that wealth could serve humanity. To others, he was the man who proved you could buy redemption if the check was large enough. Rockefeller didn't just build a company. He built the framework for modern capitalism. The trust model he created became the ancestor of today's conglomerates. The vertical integration he perfected, from raw material to retail, became the standard for corporate dominance. And the public backlash he triggered reshaped American law, giving rise to antitrust enforcement that still defines business limits more than a century later. His strategies live on in mergers, acquisitions, and supply chain control. Only now, they're measured in algorithms, not barrels of oil. The mechanics evolved. The mindset didn't. Rockefeller proved that scale could replace innovation, that financial engineering could overpower invention. He showed that public outrage fades faster than profit margins. Even his philanthropy became a template. The idea that reputation could be rebuilt through institutional giving, that wealth could write history faster than historians, began with him. His companies became ExxonMobil, Chevron, Amoco, Conoco, names that still dominate the global energy market. A century after the breakup, the empire he was forced to dismantle continues to fuel the world. Rockefeller's story is about how power is built, defended, and disguised. He mastered all three. History remembers him as both an architect and a warning, a man who proved capitalism could be perfected and showed exactly why it shouldn't be. John D. Rockefeller called competition a sin. He built an empire to erase it, and then a legacy to justify it. His fortune outlived every rival. His methods outlasted every law meant to contain him. The world learned from him, even as it tried to forget him. Every monopoly broken, every antitrust case filed, every billionaire promising to give back. They all traced their lineage to one man who proved that control wasn't seized. It was engineered. Rockefeller's story ends where modern capitalism begins, with the realization that domination and innovation can wear the same face. He gave America its richest century, but also its most unequal one. And a century later, the same pattern repeats. New industries, new tycoons, same hunger for scale. Different products, identical instincts. Today, it's in networks, data, and influence. The tools changed, the architecture didn't. This is Bedlam Bear, where chaos has context and the internet's wildest stories get the clarity they deserve.